The Nike Victory 2 and the Nike Dragonfly 2, Nike's premier middle distance and distance spikes that actually share a ton of overlap, but how do you pick which one is right for you? Which one to pick, the Victory 2 or the Dragonfly 2? This is a question I see endlessly online trying to decide between these two spikes. Now, for the past 3 or 4 years since the introduction of the Dragonfly, the original Dragonfly, the Dragonfly has been the dominant super spike on the market. This has been used for everything from the 800 to the 10,000 meter and really everything in between. This is the one that everyone's reached for. But since the Paris Olympic Games this past summer in 2024, the Victory 2 now seems to be the spike that is the dominant one for definitely the middle distance events, but some of the distance events for some athletes, notably Jakob Ingebrigtsen and Sifan Hassan. So this spike seems to be taking over where this spike left off, but how do these spikes compare head to head if you are looking for the right spike for you? And starting with the specs of these two spikes, the stack heights are very similar. They're both under the 20 mil stack height limit for spikes according to World Athletics. It's crazy that we're talking about stack heights and spikes, but that is the world of super spikes. Now, both are 19.9 mil in the heel, again, under that 20 mil stack height. And in the forefoot, we're 19.3 in the Victory 2 and 19.7 in the Dragonfly 2, giving you a little difference in drop, but you're talking about fractions of a millimeter. You're never going to feel it. Both of these spikes are legal for any type of track racing event, according to World Athletics, and they both feel very well cushioned, but in very different ways. Now, both spikes have the 4-pin layout that Nike's been doing on some of their super spikes, notably these two. And from a weight standpoint, you're looking at 4.79 ounces or 136 grams for the Victory 2, or 5 ounces even and 142 grams in the Dragonfly 2. Very similar weights. The Victory 2 is a little bit lighter, especially in hand, but I will say on foot, you don't really notice the difference, though the Victory 2 does feel faster, but I think that has more to do with its design than its weight. And the primary difference between these spikes is what Nike calls the engine of the spike. In the Victory 2, we have a big dual-chambered forefoot air zoom unit surrounded by ZoomX foam on the toe and in the midfoot into the heel, and then you have a full-length carbon fiber Nike Fly plate in that shoe. Whereas with the Dragonfly 2, you have full-length ZoomX foam across the entire midsole, and then a full-length injected PIBA spike plate that goes from toe to heel. So it is not a carbon fiber plate, it's an injected PIBA plate. In fact, that's the primary difference between the Nike Dragonfly 2 and the Dragonfly 2 Elite, is that the Elite has a carbon fiber plate and some minor modifications to the spike plate and the way the pins work because of that carbon fiber plate. But that's the primary difference between the two versions of the Dragonfly 2 that are out there. And moving to the outsole of these two shoes, you can see there are significant differences in the width and the design and approach to the outsoles of both of these spikes. Now, starting with the Dragonfly 2, this is Nike's distance spike. It's primarily intended for the 5,000 and 10,000 meter events, though it's used in the 3,000 meter event, and it's also used in the steeplechase. So it's a slightly wider platform that has a bigger sweet spot, especially in the midfoot and in the heel. It's a spike that just has a lot more versatility as far as where it's run because the Dragonfly is run in so many places, including cross-country events. Whereas the Victory 2 is a very focused middle distance spike, focused on the 800 and the 1500 events, and it's really tuned to maximize speed for those events. And you really do feel how much more nimble the Victory 2 is on foot. Though again, these are both track spikes. They're both extremely fast, extremely aggressive, and extremely race-oriented. But the Victory 2 is really built around those shorter middle distance events. And zooming into the forefoot of both these spikes, this is really where you see the differences in the spike plates and just the spikes in general. These are track spikes. They're meant to be run up on the toes very aggressively. For the Victory 2, which is the one on the left, you can see that dual chamber setup, the dual chamber air zoom units. You can see there's a smaller unit on the lateral side and a larger unit on the medial side. And in the Victory, you see that's just a wider, more contoured overall spike plate. These are both the same injected PIBA material spike plates. But remember, the Victory 2 also has a carbon fiber plate above the air units. Now, specifically the air unit in the Victory 2, that smaller one on the lateral side is there to absorb the impact of the foot, and the larger one on the medial side is really what's powering the spike and giving it its resilience and its response. And you can also see that there's differences in the actual pin layouts. The pins on the Victory 2 are giving you grip on that initial foot contact, and they're maximizing grip on toe off. Whereas on the Dragonfly 2, they're a little bit more broad, and again, that's because the Dragonfly 2 is used for a lot more types of events. There's one other key difference I want to point out in the spike plates for both of these spikes. So starting with the Victory 2, you can see that there's ridges on the medial side. And what those ridges are there for is to provide stability in the Victory 2. So if we look at the Victory 2, you can see these ridges provide a very flat section right here on the medial side, right under the big toe. All of these ridges are giving this spike stability, and what that's there for is that stability, especially in the turn. Your outside leg feels very planted on the turns, and it's allowing you to engage these two spikes and really drive off the toe in the turn. On the straight, you're now getting the stability in both spikes, and you're having a very stable sprint down the straight. And again, you're really engaging these two spikes and really allowing this to dig in and really maximize putting a lot of energy into the air zoom unit and really getting that resilience and that pop off the toe in this spike. It works really well, and that was one of the biggest changes in the Victory 2 over the Victory, was making this much flatter in the forefoot of the spike plate to make this a more stable shoe so that you can actually drive more energy into the track, which is the whole point of a spike in the first place. And looking at the Dragonfly, you can see that the contour of the spike plate in the Dragonfly is much more subtle. It's not quite as flat on the medial side, and it's a little bit more scooped or scalloped out on the lateral side. That's to capture the foot and bring it into engaging all of the spikes to really toe off in this, to really engage all the ZoomX foam that's in this. Now this isn't as flat because, again, this is a spike that's used across a lot more distances and a lot more events, including cross country. So this contouring of this spike plate gives you a nice stable feel. This doesn't feel any less stable in the turns, but it just allows a bigger sweet spot in this spike for quite a bit more events. And that's really what the Dragonfly has always done. Starting with the upper and fit of both these spikes and looking at the Victory 2, we have an Atom Knit 3.0 upper. This is the same Atom Knit material that's in the Nike Alphafly 3. But the construction of this upper is a little bit more minimal than what you find in the Alphafly 3. And I am a no socks runner in spikes. Spikes are designed for no socks to be as close and tight to the foot as you can possibly get. Putting a sock in the spike actually puts just another layer between you and the spike. And the whole point of a spike is to really contour and fit your foot as close as possible. These have the most aggressive race fit that you can have in any real running shoe. So having a very soft material upper like Atom Knit 3.0 is really key when you're running in these with no socks. And I'm going to say the Victory 2 is one of the softest shoes I've ever felt on my foot. And when my foot is in here with no sock, I've had absolutely no rub issues, no blistering, no chafing, nothing in this spike because everything is very soft in the upper of this spike. It is really an airy spike. It's got a little bit of a toe bumper to keep the volume off the toe, and there's some ridging down the midfoot of this coming from the eyelet chain to really lock this into the foot. And we still have the Matumbo heel in this, which really kind of suctions to your heel and just, again, clasps this shoe to your foot in just the most perfect way. It's a really, really aggressive, tight fit, but it's a very comfortable fit that really fits your foot perfectly. And moving to the Dragonfly 2, this is an engineered mesh upper. It's not as soft as the Atom Knit 3.0 that's in the Victory 2, but it still is a very soft upper. I will say the first workout I did in this, I did get a little chafing and a little rubbing along my toes from this upper, so I did wear a pair of Nike Spark socks, which are very, very minimal, very lightweight. It's their race sock, essentially, to just break this in the next workout. So by the third workout, I went back to no socks and I actually had no problem. So it might take you a workout or two to really kind of wear this in and get it to your foot. But once you do, it's a very comfortable, very accommodating upper to your foot that's soft and really conforms to your foot. Again, the Matumbo heel, which sticks to your heel and again, just makes this spike fit your foot extremely well. Now, both of these spikes are US men's size 9 for me, so they're both true to size for me. Now, spikes again should fit very, very aggressively tight. They should be the most race of race fits, and both these spikes do. Though there are differences in the fit, I will say that the forefoot in the Dragonfly 2 is wider. There is more room as far as width in this, where this is more torpedo shaped. It's a much more narrower feel in the forefoot of the shoe. But there is more volume in the upper, in the toe box especially in this. So the material of the upper stays off of your toe more in the Victory 2, whereas in the Dragonfly 2, the toe box is much flatter. This actually has a toe box around the big toe especially that's very reminiscent of the original Vaporfly Next Percent 1, the one with the Vapor Weave upper. If you ever ran in that, you know what I'm talking about. It is a bit of a toe cruncher. But again, once you break this spike in and it molds to your foot and you compress the ZoomX foam in the midsole just a little bit, gives you a little bit more room and it's really not an issue. But initially, this one took a little bit more break-in than this one. But again, these are both true to size, US men's size 9 for me. I wouldn't want to go up or down in sizing for either one of these. They fit me just how I want a track spike to fit. Let's get into the ride of these two spikes, but first let me give you a little bit of a disclaimer. I am primarily a road runner, though I am focused on track running, specifically the 800, so middle distance events right now, to work on form and mechanics, but also build a base of speed, which I'll bring back into my road running in the future. So both of these spikes are spikes that I wanted to try to figure out which one's going to work better for me, and I definitely have a preference. And starting with the Victory 2, this is technically the spike that I should be training in, or at least racing in. I'm not planning on racing, I'm going to be time trialing on the track. This is Nike's middle distance spike. This is a spike that's designed for the 800, which is the event I'm focused on right now, and the 1500, which will be the one that I get to after I get to my PR goals for the 800. And I will say that for those distances and for that faster running, especially doing 200s and 400s, this spike feels extremely fast. Now, what's interesting about this spike is the forefoot air zoom unit in here is similar, if not the same, as to what's in the Maxfly. Now, the Maxfly is Nike's sprint spike, the spike intended for the 100 through the 400. So doing 200s and 400s, which you're doing a lot of in training to do the 800, this spike feels fast, it feels energetic. The air zoom unit and putting all that sort of pressure into it on, the turn to do a 200, this feels like an extremely fast spike. And the one drawback is that it's a little aggressive. Now, I'm a forefoot striker naturally, so it's not aggressive in that it's killing my calves. It just feels like it's too much technology. There's too much in this spike to want to be training in it. Now, I'm training primarily in flats and trainers. I only put on spikes maybe for part of a workout, maybe once a week. I'm not running in spikes in every workout. But when I do put the spike in, I do want to be able to run a little bit more on the spike. So if I'm focused on the 800, but I'm going to do a workout that's like 6 by 800, I may want to do all of those in a spike just to work on getting used to spikes. Again, I'm a road runner transitioning into track running. And this is not the spike I want to be doing that like 7 to 8K total volume workout in, just because there's so much going on here. This is a spike that I want to reserve for racing or time trialing in my case, because it feels so fast. So that's why I picked up the Dragonfly 2, because I wanted to experience this spike for all of that sort of longer training volume that I would be doing to work on focusing on the 800 and eventually the 1500. And as a road runner, I'm primarily more of a Vaporfly runner than an Alphafly runner. And this is definitely the shoe that was built out of all the learnings from the Vaporfly. So I wanted to experience really the original Super Spike. And I will say that for training, if I'm doing that 6 by 800 workout, this is a much nicer spike that's still aggressive. It's still fast. There's still a big kick in this spike, but it's a spike that I can do that 7 or 8K of volume or maybe more and not really feel like I'm getting beat up, because the other key thing about this is that it is all ZoomX foam in the shoe. So I am getting all the recovery benefits of training in a ZoomX shoe. Now, I pair this with a Nike Peg Plus or a Nike Pegasus 41, as my trainer and a flat option. So I do have some other ZoomX options on track, but this is the spike that I'm putting on when I really want to hit those key times in the workouts for focusing on the 800 and 1500, where I am going to recover much better. This is what I want this spike for. And that really speaks to the versatility in the Dragonfly 2. This is Nike's distance spike, but it's used in so many other events. Like I said, the 3000, the steeplechase, a lot of other events. And if you're a runner who's just getting into running on the track and you just want one spike to really kind of do everything and try a lot of different things, this is the way to go. This is the more versatile option that's no less as fast. It's just going to be a little bit more geared towards really trying anything you want. 200s, 400s feel great in this. 800s feel great in this. 1K or 1 mile repeats in the track feel great in this if you want to do those spiked up. Generally, I would do those in a super shoe or a flat. But this is just a really versatile spike that just does a lot of different things very well. And as I said, the Dragonfly 2 is also a spike that's used quite a bit for cross-country running. So you put on longer pins or longer spikes into this, and you have an excellent cross-country spike. So it's just, again, a very versatile spike that really can do a little bit of everything. But back to the Victory 2, this is the faster spike. If I just wanted one spike to really just use for racing, or again, in my case, time trialing, this is the spike I'm going to get. If I just want a super fast, super aggressive spike that's going to be used only for my event, the 800 or the 1500, this is the way to go. This is the faster spike. When I'm in this spike, I feel like there's more potential in this spike. I feel faster in this spike for those distances. Now, I'm nowhere near the speed that's going to even touch the potential of this spike, but in this spike, I do feel like I can really get to times that are just not really possible for me in this spike, because this spike is just a little bit less aggressive. But for the longer workouts, the Dragonfly 2 still is the better option. But when I really want to maximize all that training and really go for it, this is a spike I want on foot. When I'm really going to go for my time trials and really see where I stand with all the training that I'm doing for the 800, this is the spike I'm going to have on my foot. This is definitely the faster spike. And what sets this spike apart is this air zoom unit. When I'm up on my toes and I'm really loading this zoom air unit, it's a very direct connection between the plate that's right under the foot to the air zoom unit, to the spike plate, to the track. There's really nothing in between that, and there's really no delay in this. This is a very direct ride. You put the energy in, you get the energy out, and it's a very, very quick turnover. That's what makes this spike so fast. Whereas in the Dragonfly 2, you're loading up a big chunk, an under 20 mil chunk of ZoomX foam. And ZoomX foam, while being very resilient, very fast, I'm a big fan of ZoomX foam. It's not as resilient or it's not as fast, as direct as the air zoom unit in the Victory 2. So even though there's a big chunk of ZoomX foam under the ball of the foot and right behind the ball of the foot, which when you impact the track, you load that up and you're getting all of the kind of resiliency, the energy return out of the foam on toe off, this still does not feel as direct. And it's more of a cadence of how the cushioning is actually returning the energy. This one just feels a little bit slower, where this one is sudden and direct. And for a faster event, I'm not going to call the 800 a sprint event, but it's definitely a faster event, especially coming from road running. That's what I want. I want that more direct, sudden, intense feel of the air zoom unit. And that's why I think mechanically, this one's also the faster spike between these two. Another way of looking at the difference between these two spikes is with my performance matrix. Now, this performance matrix is for road racing and training shoes. So a lot of the spectrum here is not relevant to a track spike, but I think this is interesting to see where these spikes fit on this performance matrix. So if we put the Victory 2 on here, you see that it is very much in that max effort category. It's in that realm. In fact, the red spot is the real sweet spot of this. It is about as max effort as you can possibly do. That is what the Victory 2 is meant for. And if we put the Dragonfly 2 on here, you see that, again, it's also got that sweet spot in the max effort, though because of the added versatility, the contouring in the spike plate, the ZoomX midsole, and just how the Dragonfly 2 is made for versatility, there is more range into the threshold side of things. And for running maybe a 5K or 10K, at least the bulk of the race, you should maybe be in your threshold range anyway. So that makes sense. So the Victory 2 is obviously the much more aggressive, much faster spike. But as you can see, the Dragonfly 2 is definitely no slouch, because that kick in the final lap or the final 200 in a 5K or a 10K, you definitely need the speed of the Dragonfly 2. At the end of the day, both these spikes are absolutely outstanding. My preference is for the Victory 2, again, just because that's the spike specifically for the events that I'm trying to focus on. But if I just had the Dragonfly 2, I'd be totally fine. In fact, my speed and the potential that I have for speed, I'm not going to touch the boundaries of either one of these spikes. But I do prefer the Victory 2 for focused speed on track. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.